Welcome to episode 51 of the Active Bariatric Nutrition Podcast. I'm your host, Kim Tirapelli, bariatric sports dietitian. I'm so excited today to get to chat with the amazing Lora Grabow. Lora is a bariatric therapist, coach, and professional speaker with over 20 years of experience working with bariatric patients. Lora helps patients discover the missing piece of bariatric treatment, the mental and emotional factors that affect weight loss and well-being, or as she calls it, headwork. Her expertise includes providing individual therapy and one-to-one coaching, facilitating bariatric support groups, and engaging patients in her online course, Foundations in Headwork for Healthy Weight Loss. She is an active leader in the American Society for Metabolic and Bariatric Surgery. She is a sought-out podcast guest and speaker at national provider and bariatric patient conferences. I am so glad you're here. Thank you so much for coming.
I am so excited for the invitation. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kim. It's gonna be great. We're gonna have fun today.
Yeah, I know. And when I finally got to meet you at Bariatric Retreat, last November, I was just like, oh, I'm so inspired by everything you have to say and just all the work that you do within the bariatric community. I just so appreciate everything that you do and that you share on your, social media and in, everything that you put on. I appreciate it.
I love it. I have loved it. And it really to hear you give that introduction. I'm like, wow, I have been doing this a long time, but I'm engaged. I'm excited. I'm passionate. I don't want to stop. And I'm excited to come and meet all of your podcast community and share my passion, which is headwork.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's kind of leads me into my first question. So tell us a little bit more about why you chose to focus your work within the bariatric community specifically.
Yeah, so I am a trained therapist, and right out of graduate school, I always wanted to work in adolescent psych, and I did that. That was my position. I worked with teenage girls in residential care. I'm certified trauma therapist, did a lot of that work, and then I had my own kids, and I realized I wanted to switch things up a little bit, and I couldn't quite do such traumatic work, to be honest. I mean, it was, and they were girls and I had a baby girl and I'm like, I can't do this. And so actually it was a friend who called me and said, Lora, I'm coming to you from Grand Rapids, Michigan. He said, we are looking for someone who, to lead groups for patients in a medical and surgical weight loss program. And I think you would be great. And I said, well, I don't know anything about medical and surgical weight loss. And this is back in 2003. And he said, I know, but I know you know how to lead groups. So just apply. So I did. And I fell in love with it. I was hired because I was working with adults who wanted to be there, right? Such a big switch from working with teenage girls in adolescent psych. So I absolutely loved it. And specifically obesity medicine. Why did I want to work with obesity medicine? Of course, I wanted to learn everything I could, but it's all about improving people's quality of life. And, obesity is a disease, not a decision, but it's a disease where our patients get a say. They get to do some things to prevent and to treat it. And that's why I'm in bariatrics. That's why I'm in obesity medicine. It's not about a number on the scale. It's about improving patients, not only their physical quality of life and helping them live longer, but of course, as a therapist, their emotional quality of life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can relate to that. I know when I first started working in, my first position was inpatient. And so when I started working with the bariatric surgical floor, what I loved about it was getting to see folks, start the journey. The only thing I didn't love about it was I didn't get to see them beyond that. They were discharged quickly and I was like, what happened to you? How'd it go? And so when I moved into the outpatient side of it, just getting to see folks use the tool of, one of many, but the surgical tool being very powerful, and just seeing how it impacted their life in just changing it for the better and using that tool. And it's a great community. And that's how, I know we've connected through the community and I just, like I said, I love everything that you do. And let me just ask, what do you see as the biggest areas of opportunity for bariatric individuals to focus on around their mindset after having bariatric surgery or even beforehand if you feel like there's certain things they can focus on?
Right. So obviously I always say headwork is the missing piece of their bariatric treatment plan. Right. And I've been in this now over 20 years and I one day want to take missing out of that description. But even after 20 years, I'm realizing so many bariatric patients are having surgery and they're getting a lot of information on their surgical tool, a lot of information on movement, a lot of information on nutrition, and nothing on headwork. And you might be saying, well, Lora, what is headwork? And I simply say it's, well, this is how I say it to my patients. I say, you know what? You have picked the best tool to treat your disease of obesity. And that answers the how question. How am I going to treat obesity? And it's bariatric surgery. Headwork helps you dig deep and say, why do I eat? Yeah. And so, why do I eat? Let's take it to the why. Let's explore our relationship with food. Because so many of my patients have told me, and I've learned the most from my patients through the years, is they'll say, I had surgery on my stomach, not my head. And so I've spent some time like, okay, what are the foundational headwork skills, if you will? And when it comes down to foundational headwork, I think our patients need to understand a lot about their thinking, how what they set their mind on has a lot to do with their behavior. So I call it squashing their stinking thinking. So that's a foundational headwork skill. A headwork skill I often teach on, of course, is emotional eating, understanding your emotional relationship with food and how to decrease the power of emotional eating in your life. I believe that falls under my passion of headwork. And a few more that I feel foundational are healthy boundaries. How do I set healthy boundaries? Again, our patients are yes people. And so I often talk about, could your yes be sabotaging your bariatric goals? And how do you start saying yes to yourself and no to others? That falls under the headwork umbrella. And then, of course, building and using a support team. I'm very, very passionate that patients need other patients, and they need a team that also includes people like you and people like me. And how do I put this team together? The disease of obesity is very isolating. And back to that stinking thinking, our patients have a thought that says, I need to do this on my own. But would you try to manage any other chronic disease on your own? No. And obesity can be no different. And obesity is no different, I should say. And what I've learned from my patients is that they'll say, oh, yes, I have a support team. And then I'll say, but are you using them? And they're like, oh, no. Because they're excellent at being everything to everyone. But when it comes to allowing people in to walk alongside them, they're like, no, I'm good. I got it. And so that falls under my headwork strategies too, is building and using a support team.
Yeah. And a lot of that, it sounds like they can even start to focus on before the surgery to help them kind of have a head start once they've had their bariatric surgery. Would you agree?
Yes, I completely agree. What I've learned from my patients is they get so much information pre-surgery. They hear these things, right? They hear that bariatric surgery is not a cure. You're going to have to work on your emotional relationship with food. You're going to have to do a lot of work, a lot of head work, if you will. But it doesn't really sink in until after they have the surgery because they're so overwhelmed, and rightfully so. There's a lot of hoops to jump through and there's a lot of things to get through before you have your surgery. But till they experience like, oh, I'm not physically hungry anymore, but why is the refrigerator calling my name? Oh, that must be the headwork piece that Lora Grabow lady talked about. And then you're more open. Our patients are more open to receive it. So absolutely learn about it. But headwork's a lifetime. It's not something you have to get done before you have your bariatric surgery because you're going to be working on it for life.
Yeah, that's a great point too. Yeah. And, so a lot of the folks that I work with in my audience here for the podcast are folks that, they've had bariatric surgery. They want to increase their movement. They have particular fitness and goals, whatever it might be, whether they want to, just increase their muscle or they want to start training for a 10K or something like that. And I wanted to talk to you about, especially at the beginning of a new year, which, we're in February, it can be a time to sort of like refocus on goals, which is fine. And tell me a little bit about when you're working with clients, like what advice or habits do you help your clients with when they are looking to set goals around nutrition or movement, and how to really set things that are realistic that can stick around for maybe more than just that first, month or two after the new year?
Right. So you used a key word that I know you talk to your clients about, and that's realistic. What is something I can realistically do? And my patients are experts at coming in and talking to me about, and you probably have the same, like, well, I'm going to work out like 7 times a week. I'm going to work out every single day. And I'll say, well, when have you last consistently done that? And they'll say, never. And I'll say, well, help me understand that. Like, you want to go from 0 to 7. Yeah, I'll be able to do it. And what I've learned from my patients is then when I'm working with them, I said, but we want you to have a success. It's so important for you to have a win right now. You mentioned New Year's resolutions. Nobody's keeping their New Year's resolutions. I don't talk about resolutions.
Same. Yeah.
Because they're not realistic. And you have to go from what you want to do, to what you're willing to do. And I believe might even be James Clear, don't quote me on that, who said you have to be able to, you pick your movement goal or your nutrition. What can you do on your worst day? Not your best day. What can you do on your worst day? And I want to start small because I think it's really important for them to have a win. So I'll say, let's start with 1 time this week. If you haven't moved your body at all last week, why don't we start with 1? You've improved your movement by 100%. Oh, if you do 3 and you did 0 last week, you've improved your movement by 300%. And it's just that reframe. There's that thinking, right? Like, let's reframe our thinking. And what can you do on your worst day?
Right.
And I practice what I preach, because last year, never thought I could be someone who could come on a podcast and say this. I walked every day of 2023, every single day. I think it came up to like 657 miles. This was intentional movement. I know. I can't believe it. That's so
outstanding.
Excited.
Honestly, I know. I'm like, oh my gosh.
I can talk about what I'm doing in 2024 too. But
yes.
I didn't start that way. I didn't start January 2023 with, I'm going to walk every single day of the year. I started with, I'm going to walk every day in January. And it only had to be 10 minutes. Yeah. That's how I got it. It didn't have to be 2 miles. It didn't have to be, you can always get a 10-minute walk in. And that, for me, that was to the corner and back with my dog. And on some days, that's what I did, but I got it. And I involved a buddy. I had a friend, we didn't even realize it. We were reading this same book about walking and kind of had the same goal. And then we got January done and we were like, well, we can do February. And then there was just no stopping us. So then we did every single day of 2023. We walked. We didn't walk together. We just shared the Map My Walk app. Sometimes we walked together. Sure. It was great. So I always just say, start small and start realistic.
Yeah. And just like kind of, it's just building. It's like small building blocks and getting that momentum going. And like you said earlier, like seeing a win, and feeling good about that. And it doesn't have to be these huge long-term goals. I'm going to exercise, 7 days a week for an hour, I've seen that, and generally speaking, it's just hard to maintain. And then that kind of maybe falls off track, and then you feel kind of defeated some, so to speak. Right. And I hate to see that, because it's like, you don't have to do it 7 days a week to see the benefits of moving your body or helping mindset as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And then some other tips I give, I think this would be the appropriate place to talk about it, is I do head work. So a big part of not being able to do the movement is the argument we all have in our head, right? My patients call it the devil and the angel. Well, I want to work out. I don't want to work out. I want to work out. I don't want, have we all been there? You've been there, Kim, right? And I've been
Absolutely.
there. We all have this argument. And I'm a therapist who has a lot of training in what we call cognitive behavioral therapy, so CBT. And that's being able to work on the mind. Like I call it catch it, check it, change it. Catch your stinking thinking, check it, change it. So what I've learned about the argument in the head is we all have it. So, even you, Kim, as an expert,
Absolutely.
You have nobody wakes up like, I can't wait to. You and I maybe have trained ourselves to stop that argument a little bit sooner. So what I teach to my clients when it comes to movement, or nutrition, right? So sometimes I will hear, Lora, I just couldn't stop thinking about insert comfort food, pizza. I was thinking about pizza. I want it, I don't want it, I want it, I don't want it, I want it, I don't want it. And they're like, so finally I just ate the pizza. And wasn't that just better because it made me feel better. The pizza made me feel better. And that could be a whole nother podcast. The pizza probably did make them feel better in a moment with what was going on in their brain. But what I know as a therapist, even before they ate the pizza, their upset level went down because they stopped arguing with themselves.
Yeah.
Okay. So just as the decision to eat the pizza made them feel better, the decision not to eat the pizza would have made them feel better, because what's causing the distress is the argument. So let's go back to movement. Oh, I don't want to today. I'll do it tomorrow. I'm too tired. Back and forth, back and forth. Nike was brilliant with their tagline, just do it. So when I'm working with people on that argument they're having in their head about movement, I teach them that this is what's causing them the discomfort. And they have to train themselves to say, and that's what I did with my walking, just do it. Like, it was a no choice. Like, we don't like that word no. Some of your listeners are like, oh, I don't like that she just said that. But it really is. There are certain things we have in our life that are no choice. Both of us, we brushed our teeth this morning. I certainly hope we didn't have a big argument in our head about, well, do I brush them? Look at your beautiful smile. I'm only going to brush the top and not the bottom. Like, we don't do that. We just do it. We brush our teeth. There's things like putting our seatbelt in the car. We don't have arguments in our head about putting our seatbelt on. We just do it. And so this is what I try to teach people when it comes to the argument, like, stop this and you're going to feel better. Because how many times, if we're honest, when it comes to movement, all right, I'm just going to do 5 minutes. You stop the argument, you get out there, you start, you do more.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. And I loved all those examples too. And I love the Nike. You're so right. It's so true. Just do it. And just say, this is part of my daily, whatever, part of my daily just movement, daily goals. I'm just going to include this in my life, and it takes that argument out. I love that. That makes such a great point. And let me ask you this: what happens when someone is feeling like they're becoming overly focused, maybe like that feeling of loss of control around movement, nutrition? Like, how do you establish like a good balance? How do you help folks reestablish that good balance around movement or nutrition when they're feeling like it's becoming so, they're overly focused on it, and now it doesn't feel like a healthy relationship? It feels like, this doesn't feel good. How do you advise that?
So first of all, I'm going to celebrate the win that they are realizing that it's not a healthy relationship. Oftentimes it might be you or it might be myself working with our clients that we're realizing, okay, this is becoming too much. And we need to, as the professionals that we are, be very aware of that people who struggle with disordered eating or eating disorders, bariatric surgery does not cure that. And you have to keep working on that. And I have seen patients in my 20 years, and I'm sure you have too, that struggle with it becoming too much, like movements becoming too much. They're restricting food too much. Yes. And I guess it goes back to you. First, I'm going to praise them if they do know. If they didn't know, I would start talking about balance with them. And I think I would use the words, is this life giving to you anymore? Mm-hmm. And if it's not, we need to talk about why. And then back to building that team. Would you be willing to go talk to a therapist or a professional about finding that balance? Because it seems that food's getting in control of you instead of you feeling in control of food, or movement's getting in control of you instead of you feeling in control of your movement.
Yeah. No, I think that's great advice. Because I do see that quite a bit, especially when, of course, we promote, the importance of movement and good nutrition and establishing, those good habits in daily life. And I often see where folks, maybe they're doing it and they think more is better, like, well, I need to do more movement because I'm not seeing a number on a scale, or, I thought I was going to gain more muscle with this, resistance training program. Why am I not, And so then we start layering on more and more and more until it gets to a point where, like you said, it's taking away from enjoyment and taking away from their life. It's becoming so restrictive that it's impacting like their loved ones, in their home or whatever. And I just see that's, it can be really out of balance kind of quickly.
Yes. Yeah. So we need to be just, aware of these risk factors. And again, it's all about balance. And again, I love how you said, well, I'm doing more. Why isn't this happening? Why, again, that's where I love when people work with someone like me, a bariatric therapist, to work on the headwork. We call that all or nothing stinking thinking,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be that way.
And then if they
It doesn't
don't see
have
the
to be that way.
results right away, then they quit because it's all or nothing. I either do it perfectly or I'm not going to do it at all, right? But go back to what I said. If you didn't move your body 0 times last week and you did 1, you've improved 100%.
That's a win. Absolutely.
It's a
Yeah.
win.
Take
It's
that.
a win.
Yeah. No, totally. And what do you when someone's feeling like they're off track after bariatric surgery or they're not seeing the results they expected, are there any areas that you recommend to like refocus on that can help them to get back on track, for example?
Right. So first of all, our patients are experts at beating themselves up.
Right.
And so if they feel like they're off track, which by the way, you're going to be off track. You're human.
Totally.
And let's go back to obesity is a chronic disease, not a decision. You're going to have flare-ups, if you will, of your disease or symptoms that return. Doesn't mean you're a bad person. It means you're struggling with some symptoms and you may need some different treatment. And what I try to do in that moment is first, I remind them that their progress is not that fragile. They're not back at the beginning, that they may feel like they've lost all their progress, but feelings aren't facts, right? So we start and say, well, what evidence do you have that you're back at the beginning or you've lost all your progress? And if they've been working with me a while, whether that's in group, whether that's in my online course, whether that's in my individual practice, they're celebrating wins on a regular basis. And so I encourage my patients to write down their wins, even if it's just on a little sticky note, and put it in a box or put it in their phone. Have a list of every day. We do so much tracking of food. Why can't we track our wins right there? Like in the note section of MyFitnessPal, put, I got my movement in, I got my water in. And what you're doing is you're recording a diary of wins. And so on the days that you're discouraged, what I say is when you feel like you've lost all your progress, you haven't, let's look at the facts. And if they've been doing the work and celebrating the wins, they can pull out the data and say, oh, that's still true about me. That's still true about me. That's still true about me. And that helps them get back on track.
Yeah,
the other tip I give them, besides focusing on their wins, is start with one area. Again, back to that all or nothing thinking. Patients are like, okay, I'm going to get back on track. I'm going to get my protein in. I'm going to get my nutrition in. I'm going to go back to support group. I'm going to get my movement in. I'm going to, get my hydration in. You're setting yourself up to fail. Pick one. Pick one. And actually, they don't like it. But even before they start working on nutrition and movement, I'm like, could we just start with a headwork skill? Yeah. Can we just celebrate wins this week? Because right now, your mind is so full of stinking thinking, you're not seeing any of them. But if we could start tracking wins, that's the one thing I want you to work on this week. We're going to be able to turn things around.
Yeah. I love that. And it's easy to do. And it helps with that kind of that mindset shift, of, okay, I don't have to, I don't have to do 8 things to be successful. I can do one thing to feel, a win or feel some motivation and some momentum.
Yes.
No, I totally agree with that. And so are there any other strategies like you'd recommend for someone who is struggling with emotional eating? I know this is, you work a lot with folks on that. And I will see that too, because for example, when someone is moving their body more, they might feel more hungry. And absolutely. I see that okay, is that right, wrong? I don't know. Is that normal after bariatric surgery? And then I also then see too is, I'm feeling stressed about being more hungry or whatever, and it kind of turns into this snowball of like, I don't want to say like guilt, but you know what I mean? Where they just start feeling like they're second guessing their body's cues. And I do see that sometimes lead that into more emotional eating where they start, thinking about certain foods that sound really good or look good. And I remember you saying that at bariatric retreat, if you're thinking of food and that it looks good or that it sounds good, that's more of an emotional eating cue. Is that correct?
Yes. I was going to say, you and I talked about this at the bariatric retreat. So emotional eating is probably the number one topic, the number one headwork topic that patients want to talk to me about and, share today, or that was my keynote at bariatric retreat is talking about emotional hunger. And so, first of all, I want to stress, because I know you agree with this, Kim, yes, when you increase movement, you're going to have more physical hunger, right?
Yes.
So when you are physically hungry, we want you to give it the appropriate fuel, which is food. And one of the wonderful things about bariatric surgery is when you're physically hungry, and this is my tank, if you will. I know some people are watching me. We have a physical hunger tank, and you fill it with the appropriate food, you're satisfied, right? And that's what bariatric patients have told me through the years. They're like, I'm finally not hungry. Like, I'm finally physically satisfied. Yay. Okay. That's the physiology of bariatric surgery. Guess what? When you're emotionally hungry and you fill it with food, your emotional hunger is going to persist despite eating. So there's a cue. So the first thing, if you're struggling with emotional eating, first, I work with patients on how to tell the difference between physical and emotional hunger. And it's exactly what I just said. Emotional hunger is going to persist despite eating. Emotional hunger is often tied to our senses. So that looks good, that smells good, that sounds good. I have a taste for something sweet. If you're hearing thoughts, and again, look at, I'm talking about a head up here versus down here, right? Our stomach. It's a good cue that this might be emotional hunger. Okay, so next tip. Well, what about, I can say that I'm emotionally hungry, but now what? Like, now what do I do? And I would often jump to strategies, early on in my work in obesity medicine. I'm like, okay, well, let's do a food mood journal. Like, let's start writing your feelings down, like when you're eating, and what are some of the feelings? And they would come back to me with blank pages, and they're like, I just really didn't know what to do. And what I've learned is my patients don't have a feeling vocabulary. We know like 3 feelings: happy, sad, and mad. And there's so many more. In fact, I think I have it here. I'm in my office today, my brick and mortar office in Michigan. But those of you watching on YouTube, like, there's a pillow. Your emotion sensation wheel, and has all these feelings and where we're feeling them in the body. Names of feelings. There's an app out there called the How We Feel app. And so first of all, when people want to work with emotional eating, I say, build your feeling vocabulary. Start naming feelings. How did I feel? Feeling sad and feeling disheartened are 2 very different things.
Yeah.
Right? Even mad and frustrated. Right?
Yeah, subtle.
A lot of people will say sad, and if we explore a little bit, it's shame. Right? Our patients carry a lot of shame. And so you have to be able to name the feeling before you can honor it in non-food ways. And then I work a lot with my patients. Okay, your feelings are data. They're messengers. They're telling you that they need something. And if they could talk, I think they would say, please stop giving me food. I'm not hungry. And so then say, okay, get curious about that feeling. What is that feeling telling you that you need? If you're overwhelmed, you probably need some relaxation. That sounds healthy to me, right? Yeah. If you just you're like, I've just had a long day and I want to kick back and I want to decompress. That sounds like you want some soothing. You want some relaxation. Super healthy needs. And guess what? They're worth more than French fries. I always say it's worth more than a French fry. So how can I relax? How can I decompress in a way that's really going to meet that emotional need?
Oh, I love that. That's so helpful. Yeah, I think it's there's a lot of nuance to what you mentioned in terms of knowing more than the 3 feelings. That wheel is so helpful. So when folks, if you want to watch this on my YouTube channel, you can see the pillow that Lora just showed. Yeah. I've never seen that before, but it's so true, because there's so much more maybe subtle that, if you actually look at how many options there are there. Oh my goodness.
Scared, anxious, insecure, hurt, mad. And then oftentimes, even before that, I jumped ahead. Before patients can name their feelings, they feel a physical sensation. Well, I feel jumpy, or I feel unsteady, or I'll feel numb, right? And so then they connect that with a feeling, right? So not only do we have to name them, we have to talk about where we feel them in our bodies.
Yeah. No, I think it's so helpful. There's just so much more out there that, I don't know, like when you mentioned the word shame, I think that's what I feel like folks that I work with struggle with, in terms of they just don't understand why just moving more and they've reduced their intake, why it's not resulting in whatever their, whatever this goal is. And there's so much more to the mental side of this that is so important and helpful in this lifelong journey that you're embarking upon once you've had bariatric surgery. And I feel like sometimes I think that the frustration is just from not knowing that there's so much more to dive into that impacts their journey,
Right. Which goes back to why I say Headwork's the missing piece. Yeah. How do they know what they don't know? Exactly. We continue to have surgical centers that are giving so much information on movement, so much information on nutrition, so much information on the tool, and hardly any information on headwork.
Yeah.
And so much of it is the headwork.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it impacts every area of your life. I mean, you have, every area.
Absolutely.
And is there any last advice that you might give to someone who wants to optimize their mental health side of their bariatric journey?
Oh, that's a hard one.
I know.
I think I want to end, talking a little bit about shame, because so many of our patients, as you know, Kim, carry so much shame, and they can go into a shame spiral, which can cause a lot of damage. And I'm going to give credit where credit is due. This is Brene Brown's work. She's one of my favorite therapists. I don't know if you're familiar with her work, Kim, but
I'm not.
Oh, you need to start with her TED Talk. So start with the Brene Brown TED Talk. And she is the leading researcher on shame. And she defines there's a difference between shame and guilt. Shame, so back to the stinking thinking, the message we hear in our head, the story we're telling ourselves. Shame is, I am a mistake. Guilt says, I made a mistake. I'm going to say that again. Shame is, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Shame is, I am a mistake. And guilt is, I made a mistake. So many of our patients, if they don't get the movement in that they planned, if they call it cheating. I don't use that word because I think cheating is a character issue. So you had some unplanned eating. You chose to go off plan. They turn that into, I'm a bad person.
Right.
I'm a mistake. They make it a character issue. It's never a character issue. It's a choice. We either choose to eat on plan or we choose to eat off plan. We either choose to get our movement in or we choose to not get our movement in. And what we know is when our patients can start learning that nobody's perfect and people are going to make mistakes, we know healthy guilt is highly correlated with getting back on track.
Right.
Whereas shame can lead to a spiral. If you continue to tell yourself what a horrible person you are and you make your food, the data in your food journal, your character, and the data in your movement journal, your character, and you start telling yourself, I'm a mistake. Ooh, that's not true. That's not true. And so I see my role as a bariatric therapist is I'm a shame lifter. I like to bring hope, especially when it comes to diseases of obesity, because obesity is a disease, not a decision. They've been told for years, it's your fault. It's just as easy as eat less and move your body more. Eat less and exercise. And we know as experts in the field that doesn't work.
No.
And I'll never forget a patient when I taught him the difference between shame and guilt. It was a game changer. He's like, I'm not a bad person. I have a disease. And sometimes I make mistakes, and that's okay.
Yep.
So that would be the last little tip I'd love to leave with your podcast listeners today.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And tell us a little bit more about your virtual course, and when this is available and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I have two exciting things I can share with your audience right now. And so it won't be too late. So when people are listening to this, I actually have a live course that I'm launching that begins March 4th. It's on emotional eating. Emotional eating, healing your relationship with food. It's going to be 8 weeks, kicking off March 4th, 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It will be recorded if you can't make it. Head on over to my website, loragrabow.com, and register. We can absolutely welcome you into the course. If that's something you can't participate in, you like to do something a little bit more at your own pace, I also have that Foundations in Headwork and Healthy Weight Loss course that we talked about at the beginning. And that is a 7-week self-paced course. You can go over to my website, loragrabow.com. You can purchase that. It's on sale all the time, and you work with it at your own pace. And that's more, I literally invite you into my living room. I filmed all the modules right into my living room, but you go at your own pace. There's quizzes that go along with it. You get emails from me on a weekly basis. Would love to invite you into that online course community. Of course, please follow me on Instagram if you're not already. I'm just at bariatric.therapist. And you can also sign up for my email list so I can stay in touch, which
I love
is
it.
on my website.
Awesome. Okay, good. Well, then I don't even have to ask the last question, which is, how can they follow you? So there's
Yay!
everything. Yay. No, everyone, please, folks, just give Lora a follow and check out her courses, because as we've talked about throughout today's entire episode, it's just so important, this area of the journey, and not, just focusing on like, okay, I had the surgery and now I'm just going to, walk every day or whatever that might be in terms of a movement goal. There's so much more to this journey that really relies a
Yes.
lot on the mindset.
Yes. Yes.
I
Yes.
love that.
Yes.
Oh, well, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm so appreciative of your time and your expertise. Thanks so much for taking the time to be here today.
Thank you, Kim, for having me and valuing the role of Headwork on the bariatric journey. I appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, you guys certainly please follow along. You can watch the full episode of this video of the podcast on my YouTube channel, which is the Active Bariatric Nutrition channel, and then just subscribe to it. Give it a like. That way, you'll be alerted when we post the video. And if you wouldn't mind, just please share this podcast with someone who you think might find this information helpful. Because the goal of this podcast is just to touch as many folks as we can and help with good, evidence-backed information and professionals that can share different areas of the journey and highlight different ways to, address and work on goals, etc. after bariatric surgery. So certainly please share if you don't mind. And then if you would like to follow me on my social media, I'm on Instagram, Active Bariatric. Also, I have a Facebook community called the Active Bariatric Nutrition Community. I have a TikTok channel. And if you would like to learn more about my one-to-one bariatric nutrition coaching services, you can go to my website, which is activebariatricnutrition.com, and schedule a free discovery call so that we can learn more about each other. So we will do this again next week. Thanks again, Lora. I appreciate it. And we'll do this again. Take care, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.